Hi, and welcome to Growth Talks podcast. It's a place where you can find tools, suggestions, advice, tips, so much more on personal and professional growth coming from experts in these areas. My name is Snezhana. I'm your host for today, but I'm also a business coach and a leadership trainer. It is a pleasure today to talk to the gentleman on my screen to my left, who's been very kind to join me today for our episode. Patrick, welcome. Can you please share a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Snezhana. It's lovely to be here. Well, I am a full-time financial coach with 20 years of financial experience.
Wow.
Believe
Okay.
believe it or not, I'm an accountant by profession. So instead of correcting the error of my ways by changing careers, I I used my accounting background, to pivot
Good.
pivot
Good.
towards financial advisory. And I spent many years working in this field for the world's largest consulting firm. I worked in private equity in Malta and in London, and also in investment management. But all these areas and all my qualifications taught me about money management from various separate angles.
Mm.
And more importantly, throughout this time, I've been lecturing MBA, masters, and finance courses for the past 10 years. And
Nice.
Snezhana, this is where I see firsthand C-level professionals, boardroom leaders, and generally well-educated people struggle with basic financial concepts like what's compounding, what's cash flow, and so on. So after doing this for a while, I went down this rabbit hole and I started reading statistics like in my country, financial problems are the number one cause of stress,
Mm.
or 1 in 2 people found themselves not having enough money left over at the end of the month last year. So I thought, what if I blended my accounting, advisory, and lecturing experience into one service that coaches people how to manage their money from A to Z. And
Yes.
that's how Patrick DeBattista Finance for You was born.
I love it. I didn't know you had some of the other qualifications that you mentioned because, when we initially met and chatted, I knew that you were into finances and as a financial coach, but I didn't have all this depth of who you are and what you do. That's amazing. Well, I'm so happy that you're here today. And if you're still wondering why we're talking about money today, well, it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur, a leader, or just a high school student. It is really important for us to know how to manage our money. And I'm from Serbia, and in our country as well, we don't get educated. There's no official class or a course that you can take in financial literacy. And normally, money is like a taboo topic. We just don't talk about it, which is interesting because it is probably the top means for us to get to places and to do things. So, today I would like us to talk a little bit about, you mentioned it in your intro, how can we make sure that we do have enough money for the whole month? And then also, if you can share any tips or anything throughout our conversation on how to actually save, because I don't think we know how to save properly. So
Mm.
let's start by sharing the challenges. It's easiest to start that way from your experience working with clients, teaching, your own experience. What do you find are some of the main or most common challenges when people are managing their money?
Okay, sure. So there are two topics, in my view, in the
Uh-huh.
whole world that impact us all, whether we like it or not. And those topics are money and health.
Hmm.
So even if you're not interested in money, money is definitely interested in you.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I love that.
100%, we have to learn this stuff because it impacts you, it impacts me, it impacts everyone around us. So look, it all boils down, in my view, to a lack of financial education. But
Hmm.
that lack of financial education has resulted, from my experience, into a series of mistakes or challenges that I find people actually encounter.
Mm.
I can think of three, but there's many more, but three come to mind that
That's
are
okay. We can start with that.
Let's start with 3. Then in a separate podcast, we'll have the other
Yeah,
10 or
yeah.
so.
A list of 20 things you shouldn't do. All right, so what are the 3 that come to your mind as you're thinking about this?
Number 1, people don't pay themselves first. So what do I mean by
Okay.
this? So you receive your salary, assuming you're an employee, unlike you and I. So we receive your salary, which is like the normal people do. And instead of saving, people start paying the landlord, paying the bank, paying the tax man or the tax person, paying utilities, paying groceries, and they save what's left after they spend all of this.
Right.
So I think paying yourself first should be saving, or rather
Ah,
spending what is left after saving. So you start by getting your salary and immediately allocating a percentage of that salary to your future self by saving or
ah,
investing.
I
And
love
then
this.
you work with the rest.
I love this. May I just quickly ask, and you may have wanted to share this anyway, but is there a particular percentage? I think in the US, I read somewhere people suggest like 20% of your paycheck should go to your savings, but is there a percentage that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, this is a very important question, Snezhana. So in the classic framework is the 50-30-20 rule. That's probably
Okay.
the one that you're referring to, wherein people should budget or allocate 50% of their after-tax income towards their needs,
Okay.
30% towards wants and fun money,
Uh-huh.
and the remainder, which I'm arguing should come first, is
Uh-huh.
the 20% that we should save and or invest. Now, you
Right.
might tell me, yes, right. I mean, how am I going to save 20% of my income if I have 2 kids, a dog, this and that? Expenses are always going up, inflation, this and that.
Mm.
I get it. Life can be tough. One, you don't have to save 20%. You don't have to
Mm.
do the 50-30-20 thing. You can do the 70-20-10. You can
Mm.
do the 70-25-5. But as
Mm.
long as you're consistently saving and hopefully investing something at the end of each month, then you're instilling a habit that will eventually, decades later, compound into something great. Now, you might say, yes, right. Besides the cost of living, then I might have emergencies. Then I might have to tap into those
Right.
5%, or I might not have enough money at the end of the month. Yes, I get it. You might have to tap into those 5, 10, 20% eventually. But the point is, start by paying yourself first.
Yeah.
Then pay everyone
Right.
else.
We're so quick to think of all the things that can go wrong and where we need to spend the money. That's really quick question on that. I read somewhere of the envelope system.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, can you share a little bit about that and what are your thoughts on it?
Yes, of course. So that's the cash stuffing system, the envelope system, where you actually physically look at cash and
Uh-huh.
use cash for all your transactions, and actually put rather than using paper money or using cards, literally put or allocate expenses in cash into different envelopes, which
Okay.
for some people actually works because you're physically having that point of resistance. You're physically feeling the pain of parting with your hard-earned cash.
Right. I can see how that works.
You can imagine, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
that approach is, in my view, not the most efficient because let's face it, the world is going or transitioning into a paperless
Right.
system. Plus, you don't want to have cash lying around all the time,
Right.
just in case you might lose it or it actually will lose value itself.
Yeah.
Having
Yeah.
cash is a guaranteed loss. So you might as well try and find ways to make this money work somehow through
Mm.
other means electronically. But that's
Mm.
for another
Yeah,
time, right?
absolutely. So let's go back to our list, right? So number one, you said is not paying ourselves first, and in your words, that's saving. So instead of waiting until seeing what you have left at the end of the month to save, you start by saving first. Did I get that right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what would be number two as a challenge?
Yeah. Number two is rather than wonder where your money went, why don't you tell it where to go? And you do
Okay,
this by creating a financial plan.
okay.
So a financial plan or a budget, call it what you wish, is where you would say, right, this is my after-tax income. This is what I'm going to budget for my needs,
Mm.
50%, for example, for my wants, and for my saving, which I, place in the first bucket. So
Yep.
create that plan and try and stick to it. That's number two.
Okay. That one was I was kind of just leaning back to hear more about it.
Well, we can go on for days if you want, honestly, because then you can compare like the budget to the actual figures. You can compare
Mm.
month by month. You can compare yearly trends, and that's where the accounting background comes in.
Right. Is there so personally I use just a spreadsheet. Is there anything more sophisticated that we should be looking into, or what would be your advice maybe on the physical, I guess, the physical look of that budgeting?
Yeah. Actually, everyone is different. And I give workshops to all kinds of people, such as vulnerable people in society who actually use pen and paper.
Mm,
To very advanced tech-heavy businesses, tech-savvy businesses who would want an app. So
right.
in between the spectrum, there's people like you and I who tend to use Excel,
Right.
which is fantastic because Excel teaches you. It's a bit like at school, right? When we had those really good teachers that actually told us, no, you need to work it out in a certain way. But I can do it on Excel itself, ironically, or I can do it on a program, or I can do it with my calculator. No, you have to use your mind and work through the process.
Right.
And Excel helps with that in the sense that you're actually teaching yourself and seeing on one sheet where you're allocating your money. You can
Okay.
also mix this with an app as well to compare what you actually spent.
Right.
So I tend to use the hybrid approach to
Mm,
my Excel and an app, a spending
okay.
tracker.
Yeah, I'm a level below you, so I'll upgrade eventually.
No, that's good. Whatever works for you. Snezhana, personal finance is more personal than it is finance. So if
Right.
it works for you, then perfect.
Yeah, yeah, no, but I agree with you. I think it's really, and of course, when I became an entrepreneur, these things became more obvious to me, thinking about how much you spend, where you spend. When I was just employed, ironically, I didn't know that this was how you were supposed to do it, but I did save at the beginning of the month. So when I get my paycheck in, it was like, all right, this goes to savings, um, and then you spend the rest. But I agree. It was trying to learn and understand, wait, hang on, there's all this money, and it can be very little, it can be a lot, but there's this money that keeps coming in and I just don't know what's going on with it. So it kind of goes with the flow. And I agree, if we're more intentional with managing our money, we're more likely to save, to manage it better, to have it more, if we want. Okay, so that leaves us at number three. What would be the number three challenge?
Yeah, number three. Number three is actually what people call, probably people in your circles call the hedonic treadmill, right?
Okay,
So lifestyle inflation. So you get a promotion at work, you probably enter a different social circle, your peers are all a cut above you, wealth-wise. So you want to upscale, you want to buy a new car, you want to rent a new flat. Happened to me. And this is what it's like to keep up with the Joneses, right? Or
mm, mm.
unfortunately nowadays, keeping up with the Joneses is actually keeping up with the Kardashians because we're there 24/7 with
Fair
social
enough.
media, people telling you, I've got this, status, I've got that status, I've got this object. So it's become increasingly difficult to maintain the same lifestyle and not upgrade. Little do we know that the Joneses themselves, or the Kardashians, or whoever, are trying to keep up with the other Joneses. And
Right.
chances are the other Joneses are themselves broke
Mm.
and buying liabilities like cars,
Mm.
left, right, and center. So I find this very, very commonly. So a good technique that you can use is, let's say if you do get promoted,
Mhm.
try and maintain the same lifestyle that you had before, and try and that salary differential that you're earning now, that higher salary, that difference, at least try and remove or rather save a large chunk of it, if not all,
Mm.
and maintain the
Mm.
same lifestyle.
Okay, I can hear people saying to this one, but what's the point? So if I keep getting promoted and keep getting more money and just putting it in a bank, isn't it kind of losing its value as well? So what can we do about that? What about, what if I want to splurge? Is there a balance? So can I splurge from time to time and still maintain my savings? Or when do you talked about investment, and we don't have to talk about investment right now, but when do I start thinking about investment? Is there a limit of how much money you want to have in a bank when you start thinking about investing? Like any thoughts there?
That's a fantastic question. And this is why we do a financial plan, not to pinch every penny, not to count every bean, but
Mm.
we do it to consciously spend, the way you rightly say it, and find certain parameters to be able to spend guilt-free if we want to. No, why
Okay.
not?
Now we're
And
talking. Okay.
now we're talking. You like that, right? Everyone does. So do I.
Of
So
course,
we like
yeah.
that. But there actually are I did create a framework for my country and Europe in general, because again, you rightly say there's a lot of content out there that's mostly US based. It's
Mm.
mostly talks about Roth IRAs or 401ks or this or that, completely irrelevant to a European audience.
Right,
So I
right.
thought, why not create this framework that's geared and tailored towards a European audience?
Okay.
And that framework states that I have a 7-step system
Hmm.
where I won't go into the 7 steps, but the first step is definitely have an emergency fund
Hmm.
of any level. This could be 200 euros, this could be 500, this could be 1,000. A small starter emergency fund is what
Hmm.
I call
Hmm.
it. Following this, create your financial plan with all the ins and outs that you're proposing. 3, pay your high interest debt, because
Okay.
we have credit cards, we have personal car loans, that we have to pay in excess of, let's say, 7% or in excess of 10%
Mm.
in interest. Get those out, because paying off high interest debt is as if you're investing at a
Hmm.
very high rate of return.
Hmm. Okay. Okay.
Then after that, have a full emergency fund that I use a formula that's tailored towards each individual person, their individual circumstances. So for example, you and I, we're self-employed, so we need more in terms of a
Right.
full emergency fund. People
Right.
who are
Right.
employed might need less. People who
Mm.
have dependents might need more. So that's a bit
Mm.
of a scale. And it's
Hmm.
usually between 3 months to 15 months on the full spectrum of your basic expenses.
Right.
It's only then, once you have these building blocks in place, that you should start investing. And then the
Right.
sky's the limit.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think even having this chat about investment at some point would be beneficial, but for the time being, let's stick to money management. You said you teach certain courses and classes, correct?
Yeah,
Um, how how much do we know about money management? What is you tossed some numbers at the very beginning of when it comes to financial literacy, but how how much do we know about money in general? Like your average Joe, where are we?
very little,
Mm.
very little. Snezhana. In Europe, only 1 in 2 people can pass a basic financial test.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's European
Wow.
wide. Number 2, only 1 in 5 understands the relationship between bond prices and interest rates, which is a key investing concept. And by the way, people in my country love their bonds, which is not encouraging. Third statistic, of all the people, at least in my country, that invest in savings, retirement, and financial products, the vast majority don't understand what compounding means.
Mm.
So this leads me to think that at least in my country, and probably this is European-wide, we are a nation of good savers,
Hmm.
but poor investors.
Oh, I think I would agree with you. I mean, of course, I don't have as much knowledge as you do, but thinking even I just had this conversation with a friend a couple of days ago about money management and investment, and
Okay.
she was saying how only now, she and her husband, they've been married for a while, they have a kid, they have good jobs, and only now they're starting to learn about all these investment opportunities because traditionally, at least in Serbia, when we think investment, we think real estate. So you want to buy a house or an apartment, and that's kind of the top of it
Same.
all.
It's the Maltese dream, or probably the Serbian dream as well, right? To
Yeah,
have property, to have your own property. When in
right.
reality, it's actually a liability owning your own property. It's
Right,
just
but this
money
is
going out.
myself too. These are the things that I'm learning just now, and I'm almost 34, and it's like, oh my God. And it's not the end of the world, better late than never.
True.
But it would be so great if we could learn these things earlier in our lives, because then you can start your career thinking, okay, so here's where I would like to get 10, 20 years from today. Um, there's still hope for us, but it would be great to have this knowledge early on. So, what are your thoughts on how can we get this knowledge? How can we stop thinking that the only investment is an apartment? Or how can we not? Also, there's this aversion to having this financial plan. Like, I don't want to count my cents, I want to be able to spend freely. I think we somehow connect tracking your money with being very stingy with it.
Mm.
So, what can we do to improve our knowledge of finances and not see it as this big, I don't know, big thing we need to be afraid of?
Mm. So there's this really good saying, I think it was by Morgan Housel, who says, save like a pessimist and
Okay.
invest like an optimist.
Okay.
So, okay, until you've reached your emergency fund, until you've kind of gotten a handle of your finances, it's okay. You can be stingy until a certain level. But
Hmm.
then once you've reached a certain level of, let's say, financial security, safety, then it's time to invest. But then don't take that stinginess into investing as well.
Okay.
You have to trust that at some stage in the long term, markets are going to, go up and to the right. Now, okay, past performance is no guarantee of future returns, but if you invest safely, if you invest in solid financial products that, over decades have yielded a good rate of return, then unless, the US economy fails, or unless there's a huge crisis, or unless there's a paradox in the financial system, then over the next 40 years, chances are you will make money.
Right.
And I'm going off tangent a bit, but
No,
I
no,
actually
go
have
for it.
I have a video on my social media, is investing gambling? And it says that if you place your money in just in the US stock market, just in a normal plain vanilla fund, and there are various, okay, but US stock market, at any point between 1926 to today, and you left that money in there for 15 years,
Hmm.
then you have a 99.8 chance of making money.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, if you invest for the long term, yes, you might not make spectacular returns, but
Mm.
chances are you are not gambling with your money if you invest in solidly. And you
Right.
have to trust that the economy will grow. You have to trust that innovation will happen, that productivity will increase. But the question wasn't that. The question was, what is the solution, right?
Right.
In my view, there are two. Luckily, one is already happening. The second one is already happening. So the first solution is compulsory business and personal finance, at least
Hmm.
from secondary school and university. I mean,
Mm.
what are we waiting for?
Right.
I,
Right.
I I'm not going to elaborate on that. I think that's non-negotiable,
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, so
right?
you like formal education kind of.
Yes, it has to be compulsory.
Mm.
You cannot have situations where I'm sitting in an MBA class teaching and you have a C-level individual who has no financial background whatsoever, and an accountant or a financial analyst who is head and shoulder above the their peer. This cannot happen in my view.
Right. Right. Agreed. Agreed. I like that idea. Okay.
Secondly, luckily it's already happening. So the second point is financial well-being education in the workplace. You know,
Okay.
businesses are already approaching me to give financial well-being workshops to invest in their own employees' financial futures.
Nice.
And this is amazing. And it adds credence to the Edelman Trust Barometer, I believe it is, which states that trust in business ethics is much higher by a country mile than it is in governments.
Wow.
So across the world,
Well, I guess I can see
businesses,
that. I shouldn't be surprised.
yeah, but it wasn't like that before. It wasn't like that. And it's now that businesses have stepped up to the plate and have
Mm.
taken a leadership role in society. And this is an example in the flesh, right?
That's
That
amazing. That's so
yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that. I was going to ask, um, and of course I know this is what you do, but I don't think if you can be objective about it. Personally, I think I would want to have the basic knowledge of financial or money management, right? Or wealth management. But then I would want to work with an expert, if I were to invest or if I really needed to make like a very long-term financial plan, I would definitely consult an expert on it. What are your thoughts on, when should we invite an expert? Can we do this money management on our own?
Agreed. Okay, so there's various topics here. So I am a financial coach. I'm
Hmm.
not I don't give investment advice.
Hmm.
So I will help you manage your money from A to Z
Hmm.
with X, Y, and Z being showing you what investment options there exist. And then you yourself can go and, for example, invest in a private pension plan or
Hmm.
invest in a property or invest
Right.
in shares with a particular, let's say, broker or institution. So
Right.
I will give you the tools and I will tell you, hey, in this investment product, for example, look out for the expense ratio.
Hmm.
So, for instance, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm paraphrasing here. I wrote a post and a video once about the impact of costs on an investment product.
Okay.
So I believe that the numbers were approximately like this. So if you had a 7% return on an investment product for a number of years, I forgot the exact number of years, and you charged 2% annually, then you are likely to, or the effect of expenses on your on your original investment, could go up to around 20%.
Oh, okay.
So literally, when someone eats away 1% or 2% at your investments, even if they're growing, the
Right.
percentage of expenses in terms of your original outlay could be really large, and this could make a
Right.
big difference to your wealth creation. So
Right.
these are the tips. This is a very micro example of the tips that I give to people to look out for. And this is
Mm,
unfortunately now we're going into financial education, and
right.
financial education allows people or empowers people to ask the right questions.
Yes, I was gonna say, some of the terms you're mentioning, of course, I've heard of them, but if you asked me to explain them or go in detail, I definitely wouldn't have those answers. So I think even starting with the basic glossary pretty much of these are the terms we use in money management and this is what they mean and here's how you go about them. I'm assuming sometimes with clients that's where you start, which is what we need. I have a teaching background and in,
Yeah.
in linguistics,
Okay.
and so what we learn with language learning is if you cannot explain a word to a 5-year-old, it means you don't know the word,
Thank
right?
you. Hallelujah. And when you teach something, you get to learn it twice. I love
Yeah,
it.
ex precisely. Yes. But, we need to be able to explain, okay, cash flow. What does that mean? We've all heard the term, or interest rate. What does that mean? Can, some of them are self-explanatory, but still not having that circular definition, like, help is when someone asks for help, right? Or something like that. So you can't use the word to explain a word.
Exactly.
Um,
Luckily, I also have workshops and give workshops to financial advisors themselves to
right.
dumb it down,
Yep. Agreed.
because
Yes.
it's as if, I was on another podcast actually, last month, and on this podcast, the closing question was, what's your favorite, or what's the soundtrack of your life?
Okay.
And this the gentleman Peter Gregg in front of me interviewing me, he's a rocker like me. I'm a rocker, right? I love rock,
Uh-huh.
and I assumed that he'd know what song I would be referring to. So I told him it's Alexander the Great by Iron Maiden. And I took it for granted that he knew it, but he didn't know it. And this
Okay.
happens, this analogy, what I'm trying to say is that probably 3 times a month, 4 times a month, people ask me, workshop attendees, clients ask me, what is a share? What is a bond? What is
Mm-hmm.
a fund? And
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
assume, and financial advisors assume, that people know this stuff, but they
Right.
don't. So
Right.
don't
Yeah.
take it for granted.
Oh, I agree. Coming, as I said, from a teaching background, I think I've been drilled on do not assume. If you want to assume they don't know. So it's better to over explain than to not give enough information. So I think that kind of goes across industries. It doesn't matter what you talk about, what you teach, or where you work. I think that the simplest example is using acronyms. I am an ICF certified coach. I had no idea what ICF stands for, which is the International Coaching Federation,
We love
until
acronyms.
until I started researching coaching. And even nowadays, when I see people in their LinkedIn profiles, they have these acronyms, and I'm like, I don't know if you're helpful or not. I assume you know a lot since you have all of these things attached to your uh, profile. But it's important for us to explain and, like you said, to dumb it down because it's so easy for a person to say, "Hey, it's okay. I know what you're talking about. We can move on." But we're often shy to ask because we're ashamed, and it feels like, we may be the only ones not knowing, which is rarely the case. But then we're shy to ask because we don't want to turn out stupid, right?
So common, so common. And in fact, now I'm joining the dots. I didn't know you were a teacher by vocation, and this explains a lot.
Oh, thank you. I assume
Yes,
it's
it
a good
does.
thing, so I'll take it as a compliment.
100%. Honestly, teaching has helped me lecturing. Luckily, I've been lecturing part-time over the years, and it has given me an added dimension.
Yeah,
And the way you
for sure.
explain, the way you learn things through teaching from your students is
For sure.
is immense.
Yep, for sure. Okay. Well, Patrick, if it's okay with you, we're going to wrap it up, even though I know we can talk about money
Yeah,
forever and ever.
that's
Um,
awesome.
any last comments, anything that you want to share that I didn't ask about or that you find important for people to know?
I'll leave you with one small nugget.
Okay.
And it's derived from a Chinese proverb, actually, but the proverb goes as follows. The best time to save or invest was yesterday, but the second best time was today.
Mm,
So it's not too late. I have so many people asking me in my workshops, oh, but I'm 55, it's too late. And my question is, do you have children, for example?
right.
Do you want to enjoy life? It's never too late. So
Yeah.
that is my parting shot.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yes, act on it now. Today's, okay, it's almost the middle of the month. All right. Well, at the time we're talking, this is going to air early in October. So save for your October and start there.
We're back to the
Awesome.
future.
Yes. Um, how can people find you and how can they work with you?
Sure. So I am Patrick DeBattista, CFA on LinkedIn. Finance for You on Instagram, Facebook, and also TikTok. I have a website, but that's still in progress.
Okay. Okay. We'll leave the links in the description so you guys will be able to find it. Okay. Well, Patrick, thank you so much. Let me just briefly do the general part, which is if you like this, subscribe, like, comment, so that we can keep working on the topics that will help you learn, grow, and develop. Patrick, thanks so much for being here today. It was a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to our investment chat.
It's awesome. Thanks, Nezana. So it's set in stone now. We have to do it.
Absolutely. All right. Talk to you guys soon. Let us know how much you like the content.